Hello and a warm welcome to Federal special program Capital Beat. Modi cabinet has given nod to the idea of one nation, one election. Already a political war of words has broken out with many questions looming large on its implementation. Now there are various sides to it. There is a legal side to it, constitutional, administrative, logistical. So the idea of one nation, one election, has this idea's time come? Is it fruitful for the democratic and the federal ethos of the country? That's the question which we are going to discuss today. Joining me now is Congress leader and spokesperson, Wing Commander Anuma Acharya. Thank you so much, Anuma, for joining. We have Samajwadi Party spokesperson, Dr. Ashutosh Verma, with us. Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for joining. And we have a senior editor, Puneet Nicholas Yadav from the Federal. Thank you so much, Puneet, for joining. And let me begin with
Thank
Ashutosh Verma. Ashutosh, how do you view this idea of one nation, one election? Because, and I'm starting with you because people are saying that the regional parties, they'll face an existential crisis if this idea is implemented. What will happen to the regional parties, and are you really prepared to face this kind of a situation?
thank you, Nelly, for giving me a chance to speak on such a wide, wide spectrum topic. First of all, I think that at this juncture of time when two of the state assembly election is going on, and I am very surprised about a few days, about 15 days ago, when Election Commission has announced the dates of Haryana and Jammu Kashmir, and they were ought to also announce the date of Maharashtra. At this junction, when they are not able to do the state election, four state election simultaneously, they are talking about the whole country simultaneous election. This seems to be a very different context why they are talking about this. Therefore, yesterday they have only approved the final report by ex-president Ramnath Kovindji's report. Uh, the report contains about 18,000 pages reports, which consist of about 191 days, means that 200 days per 100 days per day. So you can understand how they have prepared. So this is basically a plan of Bharatiya Janata Party just to derail the contest which is going among the state assembly election, because there are lots of practical questions which are still unanswered. Definitely, there is still a question about the structure of the regional parties, the federal system of the country, and how can they manage when there are a lot of diverse election communities among the panchayat election, the local body elections, and then the state and versus central election. Look, Bharatiya Janata Party needs to do two or three major changes. First of all, they needs a huge number of support from the Lok Sabha, where they are now minority government. They have to talk with their allies. Secondly, they have to about two-thirds of the majorities for change the amendment in the constitution. Thirdly, they have to ratify from the state also. So still it is a long road ahead. But at this juncture, I don't find any logical answer for this, because they haven't given a good response to what they have done exercise in last 3 or 6 months. So it's just a next word which I have given by the Bharatiya Janata. It's not going to be happen when practically at this juncture. It's not practical for the Bharatiya Janata Party, this 3.0 Modi government.
No, but Ashutosh, do you think that Modi government will be able to sail through this one nation, one election idea? Because obviously now the cabinet has just given a nod. It has to pass through the parliament, constitutional amendments, not one, but 18 of them, which have to be brought about, ratification by the state assemblies, that has to happen. So do you think that it's just a wishful thinking of Modi government, or somehow they will be able to sail through the idea?
So, Nilu, what they want to do, that they want to discuss this thing in both the Haryana Assembly election and Jammu Kashmir elections, and forthcoming election of the Uttar Pradesh by elections, and Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh and so forth, so on. Uh, they don't want to discuss a major issues which is still in the forum. We are still fighting a huge unemployment across the country. We are still fighting with the inflation. We are still fighting with the loss of the trade which we have suffered from last 10 years. So to derail all these things, they are discussing about all these things. I think this is a good idea. You can go for this idea, but before doing all these things, you have to discuss with various parties. There are about 2,500 parties across the country. Who has among we four us here, who has discussed this when before to us? So, just like different other issues, like they have gone with a lateral increase with no discussion, they have gone for land acquisition bill with no discussion, three formulas, no discussion, and now they are coming with this type of some illogical question. I think this can be happen in future. I can't deny, because it's one of the good ideas India can go. But Indian, basically we have a federal structure, and how can we make like this? Uh, Nilu, in 1951 to 67, it was same like that, and they quote that initially the Congress government has practiced this type of elections in India. But the situation at that time of India, because in the state also and the center, the huge majority of both sides was with Congress. They have full majorities. They can do. But after that, there are a lot of mid elections. There are a lot of coalition government. Suppose some coalition government has stretched out the support from the government. What will happen? So it's still very unanswered thing. I don't find any relevance for that. But the relevant question is this, because there was one report by IDFC 2015. I said that during this process, the small issues of the states will become a settle, and the huge issue can waive off all the elections. And that was a very big report done about 3 or 4 years back. So I don't find any rational things for a good existence, for the good legislature, for the better constitution of India. The state power has to be there. The issues are much more relevant, and for that purpose, now we are at least in the state of Uttar Pradesh. We can talk about the 1 trillion economy. How can at that time, when you do such a one major move in the center, and you can waive off all the election of the states? I don't find
Right.
very natural thing for that.
Right. I'll come to Anuma now. That repeatedly, Mr. Kharge and several other leaders in Congress, they've been saying that this idea of one nation, one election is against the democratic ethos. It's almost like you know uh, putting in place the dictatorial regime where the democratic ethos will be completely suppressed. Now, how do you see this idea, and how is your party preparing to tackle this issue? Now, the cabinet has given a nod. How are you preparing, and how is Congress preparing itself to handle this issue?
Niluji, I think this is yet another gimmick to divert attention from high-tech weapon being used in Manipur. The roads of national highways have emerging potholes. Haryana election. Basically, this is yet another headline management. And also in J&K elections, wherein BJP has used another tactics by not sending, not giving 28 assemblies in a 28 assemblies. They have not launched any candidates. So I think this is basically yet another headline management. Now they have packaged it well, like any other sinful thing which looks attractive, but they have not discussed it with the opposition, and bill is going to come in the parliament. So I think there is going to be many slips between the cup and the lip. Maybe there is yet another U-turn is on its way. I view it in this manner. At the same time, I just want to remind all of us that the first general elections for Lok Sabha and all states assemblies, they were held in 1951, and it all continued till 1967. After that, the Lok Sabha was also dissolved early in 1970. New elections were held in 1971. So this phenomena was disrupted. So what is the guarantee that this once they will implement, if it is implemented, then it will continue like this forever. It is going to once again, and then Ramnath Kovindji says that that the committee report says that the general body elections will take place after 100 days of these elections. So effectively this ends the concept of one nation one election on its own. This entire gimmick is basically to divert attention because implementation will happen only once the bill is passed in the parliament. And I can view that this is going to be another U-turn. This is what is my take on this.
All right. Now, let me come to Puneet. Now, Puneet, there are several other aspects and political positioning of BJP and how it's trying to position, then several other roadblocks which we see in the implementation. What are the biggest challenges for BJP? The idea itself is okay. They floated it like a trial balloon, but the implementation is the key. How do you think, what do you think are the major challenges before BJP?
Nilu, of course, there are going to be many challenges here. But let me take you through this, stepwise. What has happened yesterday? I think a lot of us are, and a lot of us in the press are jumping the gun on yesterday's decision. What has happened? A committee had submitted its report. The Union Cabinet sat yesterday and accepted the report. That's the sum and substance of what happened yesterday. There was no bill that was discussed in that cabinet meeting. Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav, the minister who was briefing journalists after the cabinet meeting, was asked that have you brought a bill, a constitutional, and they'll basically require 2 constitutional amendment bills, including a set of 18 amendments. One constitutional amendment bill that will require ratification by state assemblies, a majority of them, and the second constitutional amendment bill, which will not require ratification, but will require, as constitutional amendment bills require, a 2/3 majority in both houses of parliament, or at least 2/3 of present and voting. Okay. Now, beyond that, Mr. Vaishnav said that he, of course, did not answer because there was no answer. There was no bill that was discussed. Even he possibly does not know the contours of the bill because the bill is not ready. For the simultaneous elections to be rolled out, the first requirement will be for these constitutional amendment bills to be passed. So, for people who are thinking that they've announced this now and, end of the year, suddenly, all elections will be synchronized, it's not going to happen that. Secondly, the very first recommendation in the high-level committee, the Kovind committee report, lays down the framework for rolling out simultaneous elections. And I'm sorry, to disappoint those who were looking forward to this, including those in the BJP, that they've actually missed the bus. Because the framework that the Kovind committee laid down was that after a fresh general election is held, on the first sitting of the new Lok Sabha, which was, I think, for the 18th Lok Sabha, it was on the 28th or the 27th of June, if my memory serves. On that day, the president has to issue a notification. After that notification is issued, an appointed date has to be given. The appointed date meaning the date on which the simultaneous elections will be held, and the term or the tenure of that Lok Sabha, as well as all other state assemblies, will end. Now, that notification was never passed. The president did not issue such a notification. So for those who are saying 2029 onwards, this will be rolled out, when the term of the 18th Lok Sabha is over, even there is a problem. Unless, of course, the government is going to tweak that recommendation, which again the government has not answered. Are they going to accept that recommendation or are they not going to accept it? Okay. Now, the challenge is part of it. As I said, let's for a moment forget the constitutional amendments that will require ratification by state assemblies, because that, of course, has its own set of problems for the BJP, because there are several states that are not governed by the BJP or its NDA constituents, and those states are not going to, support it. So let's just talk about the 2 houses of parliament. This is not a parliament that we saw over the last 10 years. The BJP does not have a majority of its own including its allies, it does not have a two-thirds majority. A two-thirds majority means 363 MPs. They are at 293 right now, which means that even in the Lok Sabha to have it passed, they need another 70 MPs. Where are they getting those 70 MPs from? Or maybe it is an indication of a more sinister design that, like we saw in the previous Lok Sabha of mass suspensions to get legislative business done, are they going to have suspension of 70 MPs? So, I mean,
Logical.
one has to
Yeah.
one has to look at this through a more pragmatic, more a lens of feasibility. How do they do it in the Lok
One
Sabha?
thing, one thing which you just said, hasn't the government thought through these things? That now they don't have a majority. Even then, they've given a nod to the idea of one nation, one election. So, what about the thinking process? What has really gone
Well,
wrong with the
Nilu,
they
the
yes,
unfortunate part about this government, and when I say this government, I am talking about a continuum since 2014. The unfortunate part is that they think after they've taken a decision. Look at, I mean, forget 2014 to 2024, what they did. Look at just the last 2 months, the number of times they've had to take back decisions after making announcements. Or if not take them back completely, then, as in the case of the Waqf Amendment Bill, take a step back. One would expect that in a functional democracy, your government thinks first and acts later. Here they
absolutely
act first and think later. That is the problem.
right.
You know.
So this,
Now
yeah,
let me just
yes.
very quickly. You asked about challenges. Sorry.
No, no, no. I was getting tempted to ask one question to Ashutosh when you said now that they didn't think over enough. So is it going to turn into another demonetization, a fiasco like demonetization? So one nation, one election, is it going to head into another fiasco like that, like demonetization? Ashutosh, and then I'll come back to Puneet.
Absolutely, absolutely white out, because we have seen a lot of things which has happened, as Anupam is saying, that they don't think what they are saying. Basically the idea of putting this in the public discourse is just not to have implement. They just want to divert the issues, as Congress spokesperson has said.
Right,
Now they have just issued the women reservation bill just before the 2024 election. Can anybody tell me what they are giving benefit? They think that public are getting fooled. We are just making a mockery of the system and we can go for the election. And that's what they are saying. They are doing with these things. No bill, nothing, no homework has been done, no implementation has been done, no consultation has been done, and just throw a one day and make a change the headlines of the day, and they are just coming with one nation, one election. I don't find any logical in this. So there are a lot
right,
of things, as other co-panelists have said. Bharatiya Janata Party's working politics has been changed from last at least 2 or 3 years. Now what they are doing, they have only one motive to win the election by hooks and crooks. They don't discuss even I think they don't discuss even with their parent RSS also. They just have a one thought and flow in the market and see what direction is coming. It is
right,
okay. And Sun King, if now we have a changing the India, we are the Amrit Kal and these types of synonyms of that things. But things
right.
don't go like this. And now
Absolutely.
at least the public discourse knows that Bharatiya Janata Party present 3.0 are senseless government. They throw things like anything else, and now they roll back against him. Yesterday, I was discussing the same matters with Bharatiya Janata Party spokesperson and some of the sympathizers of Bharatiya Janata Party. At the end, they accept that we have rolled back from last 7 or 8 bills in last 3 or 4 years. They don't have any proper explanation for that. They said we are working on that and we will change, and you don't want to be, you don't want to with nation and all these things. What they say. So I think it's just a gimmick played by Bharatiya Janata Party and nothing more than that.
All right. I'll come back to Puneet because he wanted to complete his point about the challenges which I asked him. The
Yeah.
challenges
So
which BJP faces. Yes, Puneet.
yeah, thanks, Neelu. So there are a couple of things, and just to add to what Dr. Verma was just saying, the minister, Mr. Vaishnav, yesterday, he said, while informing us that the cabinet has approved, has accepted the committee report, he said we need, before we actually roll this out, we are going to consult wide number of people. We will have nationwide consultation. You know, and like I was saying, they act first and think later. The issue here is you set up a committee. The motivations of setting up that committee or the timing, I don't want to get into it. We all know when that committee was set up. Now, on the one hand, Mr. Vaishnav, in the same briefing, said there is an overwhelming majority in favor of synchronized elections. 80%, he said. These were his words. I'm not saying this on my own. He said 80% majority in favor of synchronized elections. And then he says we need wider consultation. So my point is, you had a committee which conducted various consultations. You yourself are saying 80% support for it. Then you are saying we need wider consultation. So either you've had consultation or you've not had consultation. You can't have both. Secondly, there are 46 political outfits that the Ramnath Kovind committee had asked for depositions, suggestions, recommendations from. Now, out of those 46 political parties, which included, the more bigger ones, the more, the recognized parties also, and it also included certain unrecognized smaller parties like the VCK and the MDMK and others. If you actually look at that breakup, out of those 46 political parties, 15 political parties opposed it. They opposed the thing in toto. 15 other political parties did not participate in the discussion. They refused to make depositions, which included the TDP, which is now in part of their government. So what wide-ranging consultations? You're talking 80%. Now that's a different aspect. I'll quickly tell you, we also need to look at the pros and the cons, or what the government is saying vis-a-vis what it means or how it should be done. There are functional issues here. So I very quickly relate to you what these are. The first reason that the government says is will be served by rolling out synchronized elections is that it's going to save a lot of money. Okay. Now, if it is going to save a lot of money, one would assume that the government has made its calculations of how much money it will save. You go through 322 pages of the Ramnath Kovind committee report, I'm not going into the annexures, but the operational part of the report. There is no mention of how much money is going to be saved. Neither has Mr. Vaishnav enlightened us about it. Secondly, if you want to reform the system of electoral funding, we've had the experience with electoral bonds. I don't want to go into those details all over again. So, I mean, is that the transparency that the BJP is asking about or are looking forward to? There has been a long-standing demand. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was there in the Congress manifesto in 2019. And various other political parties have time and again endorsed it, including the BJP at one point in time, of creating a national election fund and government funding of elections, to curb all these things of black money, over expenditure, etc., etc. So if saving money is your primary concern, you have an idea on the table. Why don't you go for that? Why do you want to disrupt democracy? Point number two. they say that rolling out synchronized elections will minimize the disruptions caused due to frequent imposition of model code of conduct. Now, if you actually go through the briefing of the current chief election commissioner after the elections, the Lok Sabha elections were concluded, and also his briefing for announcing the poll schedule for Haryana and J&K, and I'm using his words, I'm not saying this on my own. He said we have been progressively reducing the number of curbs under NCC so that government work is not disrupted. So if you've already been doing it, what is stopping you from doing it further without synchronized elections?
Absolutely.
Okay, point number 3. They say that, when you have, elections round the clock, like 5 years, every year elections are happening, your security forces get disrupted because, of course, there is a huge deployment. Now, let me ask them, the votaries of simultaneous elections. When the Election Commission announced the poll schedule for Haryana and J&K, and it was asked, why are you not announcing the poll schedule for Maharashtra alongside? Because that has been the tradition. The Election Commissioner's response was, 1, there are monsoons in Maharashtra. 2, there are festivals in Maharashtra. 3, we have to factor in deployment of security forces.
Yes.
So when you don't even have enough security forces to be deployed for 3 elections simultaneously, you are going to deploy the same amount of security forces, in which the vacancies keep going up.
No, but Puneet, from what you're saying, just one more question, that if they deploy the security forces for simultaneous elections, can this become a security threat as well? Because all these terrorist organizations, lumpen elements, will be eyeing on this specific period. I'm talking about the possibility, if at all they roll out this idea of one nation, one election, can it become a security threat for the country as well?
Well, I don't know. That's not something I would want to comment on. And, any discussion on the security situation is a completely different, it requires a very different plan. But my point is that, as I said, point number 3 of their justifying synchronized elections is deployment of security forces. I have just told you how they have not been able to do that even for 3 elections together. How are they going to do it for Lok Sabha, 28 state assemblies, and then local body elections? Point number 4, they say that the duration of the poll season will be brought down. How are they going to bring it down? We've just come out of a Lok Sabha campaign. That Lok Sabha campaign went on for 76 days. 76 days, 7 phases. And that is for just Lok Sabha. And of course, 3 assembly elections. For 1 Lok Sabha and 30 odd state assemblies and UT assemblies, is it going to be done within 76 days? Or is it going to take longer? If you're going to reduce it from 76 days, then why did you have 76 days in the first place?
Absolutely.
What was the rationale behind that? So then point number 5, which is again very important, because they say that once synchronized polls are brought in, it is going to disincentivize no confidence motions, and it is going to disincentivize horse trading. Now, there are 2 aspects to it. Let's talk about horse trading. Horse trading, what is stopping the government from bringing a strong anti-defection law? If curbing horse trading is your agenda, bring a stronger anti-defection law. Don't disrupt electoral process. And then disincentivizing no confidence motions. That, I think, is the most undemocratic justification for this. A government that is elected to power does not get elected with the license of running harakiri for the next 5 years. It has to be held to account. No confidence motion is a constitutionally given tool for holding a government to account.
Absolutely.
Why should the people of the country or a state, put up with an unpopular government or a government that is failing them without even the tool of asking that government questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the other argument which is coming up, of course, is that they will tend to undermine the state elections, state election offices, because there'll be a universal electoral roll. So what do you have to say about these points? That the local and the local issues will get eclipsed, the smaller parties will not stand a chance, and also the state election commissions, they will get undermined. So is this not an attack on the federal structure?
Like I said before, that every attractive, every sinful thing is always packaged in a attractive packaging. So here, when they talk about that, the system machinery, administrative machinery will be constantly occupied due to frequent and ongoing elections. When they talk about cost, when they talk about cost, then things do differ. But when they talk about this a good calendar, when they talk about the machinery will not be will be occupied only once, till then it all is fine. But when they talk about voters fatigue, which I have never heard before, when they talk about this, when they talk about expenditure, there uh, one can say that this one nation one election doesn't mean anything. But what you said, yes, in a way you are right, because the smaller parties will be at a disadvantage. But at the same time, when you talk about the entire election process happening in one time, and you were talking about security, and it just made me think that we have a certain number of police force, we have a certain amount of paramilitary forces, they all will be occupied in this. So I think that administratively it is not possible to have one nation, one election uh, in our country. And secondly, whenever this one election, any election will be disrupted, their schedule will be disrupted, this will automatically change the scenario, and it will never be a one nation, one election. Of course, the smaller parties, as you said, I think it will be not beneficial to them. They will not have a fair chance. At the same time, it tend to, some kind of damages can happen to our constitutional fabric. The union of state, that structure will also be, I think, affected. uh, but in a way, yes, that could be one point. I don't have a exact standing on that from my party, but I myself think the smaller parties, local parties, will have a problem. Yes.
So my final question to Ashutosh now, that the government has been saying that it aims to reap monetary and logistical benefits out of this one nation, one election. But looking at the cost, the heavy cost, where they are risking with the democratic ethos, where they are risking the federal fabric of the country, do you think what should be given more priority, the democratic and the federal ethos of the country, or these monetary and logistical benefits which the government is talking about? And that's the main reason why they are bringing in one nation, one election.
So, Nili, Congress spokesperson has raised a very important issue about the regional parties, and definitely there are problem about the regional parties. And as Anupam has mentioned, that TDP was not neither in favor neither opposing, and at this present of scenario, presently the Modi 3.0 is running with the help of two major regional parties of Bihar and Andhra Pradesh. So, definitely they have to prior consultation before implementing this. In your second question, definitely the monetary terms can't be overcome about the democratic values and federal structure of the country. And look, what is the expenses of single Lok Sabha election of a single phase? I think in, if I am not sure about it, in 2019 election commission has given about a 8400 crores rupees expansion by the government at that time, and government of India take about 1 lakh crore per month from the GST. So, it can't be a monetary definitely. So, monetary can't be like this, and if you also calculate the different state elections and sum up with the general elections, so we can't challenge our democratic system in terms of in terms of monetary rather than our federal structure of the constitution. So, I think Bharatiya Janata Party is just diverting these issues. These are their for the points for favoring them, but there are a lot of cons point also. So before implementing, before going long about this way, we have to discuss all the points so that the every regional parties, the national parties come go and we have some fair chances of good way between this.
One quick point from Puneet before I wind up the show, and I think I missed asking you that point, Puneet, and that was, doesn't this idea of one nation, one election look like a pretense, a sham? Because the time period and the gap which has been recommended by the committee, that in the first phase they will hold certain elections, then after 100 days they will roll out the second phase, and they have not spoken about the urban bodies, the panchayats. So what happens to this whole idea of one nation, one election when the panchayats, the urban bodies are not included at all? You just have an assembly election and a Lok Sabha election for which they are calling one nation, one election.
No, well, I mean, that one can dismiss as a bit of an issue of nitpicking because what they are proposing is a two-stage synchronization. The first stage being a synchronization of Lok Sabha with all state assemblies, and then within 100 days, all the urban local bodies or local municipal bodies, so corporations, panchayats, municipal councils, all of them in one go across the country. But to answer your question, that to me is not such a concern. My thing is, when you're saying one nation, one election, so there is a mechanism here to deal with situations which, I mean, now I'm assuming that all recommendations of the Kovind committee are accepted by the government. So going based on that assumption, the Kovind committee says that in case there is a hung verdict, or there is a government that falls, or there are some other factors. Now, of course, the Kovind panel has not suggested what those other factors are. Possibly, they did not want to mention what happened in Maharashtra as another, as a factor. But that is also a factor. That is also how governments fall. And we've seen a lot of that happening in the last 5 years. So in that event, what do? Say there is a hung verdict, you need to go for fresh elections again. Say there is a government that loses a no confidence motion and you have to go for polls again. Now there, the Kovind panel's recommendation is that fine, you go in for an election, but in that case, the new assembly that is constituted, or even the new parliament that is constituted, because central governments also fall. So if there is a central government that falls and you have to go in for fresh polls, or a state assembly that falls and a government that falls and you have to go for fresh state elections, then the new government that will be sworn in will only have the term of the remaining period of the government that fell. So, which means that if, say, the Modi government falls in 2027, the 18th Lok Sabha's current tenure is till 2034, right? Till 2029. Now, if the Modi government falls in 2027, according to the Kovind panel recommendation, you will have fresh elections, but the new government that will come into picture will not have a 5-year tenure. It will lose its tenure in 2029.
2 years.
Absolutely.
2 years. So instead of having one general election in 5 years, you will have 3 general elections in 5 years. How do you have one nation, one election?
Absolutely.
So it's a mind-boggling suggestion.
Absolutely. And I would say that probably the time is not ripe to bring in this idea, but we'll have to wait and watch what happens in the coming days. For now, the idea has been
I do. I mean, I think what Anuma said in her opening remarks about this being a diversion, in my view, this is a diversion. I don't want to, I shudder to think what they are trying to divert from, because, what this government does at times is something that people need to be very scared and wary about. But
I
this
was
is certainly a diversion. It's not a concept that is on the cusp of reality.
I was talking to one of the political analysts this afternoon on the phone, and there they said that, probably it was just a speculation that probably they're trying to address the middle class, which thinks कि अब तो हमको 5 साल में एक ही बार जाना पड़ेगा. But that was not a very convincing argument, but that was one idea which the gentleman said, that maybe they are trying
Well,
to
I
address
think,
the class who will be
well,
happy.
one of the main incentives for the middle class, when and we all of us here are from the middle classes. One of the main incentive for us, for having these scattered elections instead of synchronized elections, is that because of scattered elections, the government at times has to take populist measures even midway through its tenure.
Yeah.
Before an election, they will reduce fuel prices. Before an election, they will reduce LPG prices.
Absolutely.
So if it happens only once in 5 years, and all state and Lok Sabha election happen, then that discount is also gone. So I don't know
Absolutely.
if the middle classes are going to be particularly happy about that.
Right.
I
And one
saw
point,
and
like,
tweeted. I saw
yes,
and tweeted a cartoon to that effect. They said
yeah.
that earlier the government used to do repair maintenance work in between also. Now they will have to wait for 5 years together altogether.
Exactly, and that was
And,
that's a point which I wanted to just wind up with, that the
and Neeraj,
accountability.
one more thing,
How to hold data is
Yeah.
accountable. Yes, Ashutosh, you were saying something.
Yeah, one more thing today, Akhilesh ji has also mentioned one thing, that one nation, one election, and one donation. Definitely, if you're talking about all these things, there will be a one donation, and you have to work throughout the 5 years for to complete that donation, and will work. Policies will be go according to him only.
Right. No, no,
I wish they
absolutely,
bring out one
The
nation, one
crony
level
capitalism,
of education.
the
absolutely.
crony
No, no, it's
capitalism on the
very
height.
hilarious. It's hilarious the way they have rolled out the whole thing. But yes, for now it looks like one nation, many notions. That's what the headline today in one of the papers was, which was very interesting. But thank you so much, Ashutosh Verma, Anuma, Puneet. It was wonderful having all of you on the
Thank
program. Appeal to the viewers who are watching this discussion, subscribe to our channel, send us your feedback, and stay tuned to the Federal.